Welcome back, everybody. It's Brady and Jared. Here we are, notes from the field again from the Nozzleheads, starting with our second episode. So we're looking at kind of some of the current happenings and field scenarios that we have in the Midwest. And so, Jared, where are you at right now in your neck of the woods?
Well, Brady, it's mid-April here, just after Easter. In the far south part of my territory, there's been some planting going on. Last week we saw quite a bit of widespread rain down here, so overall fairly wet, but been cold the last couple of days. I don't know what your Easter was like, but ours was very cold. Some of us over here saw some snow. So that's kind of what it's been like. And I don't know if our forecast is going to change much for the next 4 or 5 days, but once it does break, it looks like it's going to get warm.
Yep, you could definitely send us some of the moisture. We had the cold temperatures, but we didn't necessarily have the moisture. A few snow flurries on Easter Sunday, but outside of that, pretty dry still throughout most of the Nebraska territory, western Iowa areas, type of thing like that. Although some hints of snow as you headed into a little bit of northern Iowa, northwestern Iowa, up there for type of thing. So spring has not sprung, and I think we kind of wonder when spring's going to get here. But we do have dry conditions, cold. But I think, like you said, the forecast looks like here in the Western Corn Belt that we're going to see some increased temperatures as the week goes on. And with the dry conditions, I'm sure we'll have quite a few guys out and going.
No spraying done up by you guys yet, I'm guessing, right? I mean, pretty well been waiting.
No, and that's we've had the wind, and the wind has kept everybody pretty much grounded. No pun intended, but it's more of a thing where it's been so windy and 20 to 30 mile an hour steady throughout the day that there just hasn't been an opportunity. A lot of guys not even getting anything done last week at all, and looks like it's going to be till the middle of this week before the wind settles down enough to be running a spray rig pretty successfully.
Yeah, I think it's going to take us that long before we dry up. But I mean, once I anticipate here, based on the calendar date and the way these fields are greening up so bad, I think we're going to start breaking loose and spraying pretty fast here. Which is, I guess, kind of lead me to one of the things I wanted to talk to you about this morning. Is I'm getting a lot of calls based on this cold weather snap on if that should adjust any of what we maybe are thinking or doing. And something I cover, it seems like every spring we're trying to push this threshold. I think we're going to get a heavy frost here this evening in parts of my territory. And when that happens, going back to the weed control aspect of herbicides, right? You and I both know the easiest weed to kill is the one that's actively growing. And even though some of these weeds like cooler temperatures, a frost typically is that zero growth level for a little bit. And so my consistent advice, as I guess I'd said, is if we get a frost, and especially if we start to see tissue damage, you start to see that browning or that almost wilty look to them, we probably need to wait a couple days till that thing starts to regrow, because even some of the best herbicides out there really has reduced activity. And I'm a little worried that in some areas where they didn't get as much rain, we may get this frost and people are trying to push that threshold. So if you guys experience a heavy frost here in the next couple nights, my suggestion would be just to scout our fields, see how much frost damage we had, and then proceed a couple days after that. I think with the warmer weathers later, I don't want to wait too long. We got to get some spraying done sometime, but that's kind of one watch out I wanted to bring up. And I don't know if you've got any additional thoughts on that based on what you guys have done.
No, I concur with that. I think that's the thing. We've got some low temperatures tonight. Last night it was kind of chilly in the mid upper 20s, so 27, 28, and then again tonight. After that, then it looks like we're going to break into a cycle that the temperatures are going to be above freezing at night. And I'm with you. I think that makes a big difference when it comes to weeds. We've talked about in the past where we wanted to get to 40 degrees consistently, those type of things. That's an even next step and even better with it type of thing. And then it looks like we'll have some daytime temperatures, 60s, 70s, maybe even an 80 in there. I think on Friday's a warm day this week for us. Then we're probably looking at some conditions. Wind will continue to be the biggest dictator of what we're going to get done, is because we've got it's been so dang windy out here.
And something funny on the wind, I think in the springtime we don't think about drift all that much, but sharpen shows up really well if you get it in the wrong spot. And I always remember my mom at Easter time puts a lot of flowers out and stuff. So we got to remember the little bit later in the season we get with these burn downs, the more there is exposed. So definitely watch that wind as we get going here. Right? Just another kind of watch out for people that are spraying.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a real thing because it's tempting because you're not seeing crops in the field, but you've got flowers emerging in around homesteads and residential areas, and then you've got trees leaving and different things like that. So you're going to have targets for them type of thing, and we always want to do a good job of keeping our products on target, not off target type of thing.
That's right. So, what else? I guess what else you got going? Anything top of mind? I mean, that's kind of the bulk
Well,
of my
I think
calls
one
this
of the
morning.
things that we talked about is, as the things start to get busy here and guys get going and we get planning, we know we can cover a ton of ground. The concern we always have is that do we get so much planting done that it's tough to keep up with the sprayer? And I think that's our challenge as we try to, get things done. And the wind, obviously, the wind doesn't stop the planter, but it does stop the sprayer. And so will our guys, be able to do that? And I think the discussion becomes is that what point do I continue to plant versus what point do I change my plans?
Yeah, I think that's always a challenge, right? Because there's a risk reward statement somewhere in there, right? Of planting, especially corn planting, is what I think most of my guys will go do now based on the calendar. I think we had some early beans maybe that were in the plans. Some of those will still go out, but I know when it dries up, I think we're going to see a lot more corn go. When it's time to put corn in the ground, it's time to put corn in the ground. But it's always how much weed pressure, or how much can I count on Mother Nature to give me that window to get that spraying done if I'm not keeping up. And like you said, there's a lot of days that you can plant and not spray, and so there's always a logistical challenge around that we got to think through. In a year like this, with supply constraints, I think maybe a little more priority needs to go on that sprayer than in years past, on making sure we get these weeds cleaned up. And if our planned shot was to get out pre, and that was what we were using, we may not have the flexibility to flex into a post opportunity depending on our supply challenges. So I think if anybody gets running their sprayers and planters this spring, and you can see that one's getting behind the other, specifically spraying would be the one I'm concerned about. Maybe just understanding what consequences you have on, if there are any. Maybe you're covered, maybe not. But it's pretty easy for a planter to get going and corn to start coming up. Now we got to change a plan that we weren't expecting.
Right, and there are certain products that obviously are limited. Verdict's one that until the corn comes up, that type of thing. We can spray all the way until corn emerges. But once the corn emerges, then we're not spraying Verdict anymore. So if your planting includes Verdict, then you need to kind of adjust some of your things. We're not telling guys to stop planting corn here. I don't think that's the goal. Right. And we know a lot of guys are going to go once they start and all that. What we're trying to just saying is this year, with you maybe supply limited on different things like that, then you need to consider what happens if I get too far ahead and I have corn emerging. Is it going to completely change my plans for what I have? And they're automatically, in the past, there's always something available, maybe in corn, that we probably can go to as an early post or whatever. This year, that may not be the case. It just depends, it's always going to be localized or whatever your dealer has. But I think the concern is you want to make sure that you are able to stay ahead of the weeds this year. Still important to get corn in timely, but can I make some small adjustments that may make the system work a little better?
Well, and I think on that same note of making adjustments, thinking about acres that can get sprayed that maybe you're not going to get to for a while, using some of these residuals to get out in front of that. I know it seems like to me, talking to some of my retail customers, that if they just get the ball rolling and get spraying, it seems like they start to go. We need that kind of first push on the domino. A lot of our conventionally tilled ground in my area gets planted first. It's a little bit warmer, doesn't have the weed pressure. They're planting on early posts there. But then we get those same growers that go to a no-till field and they're covered in winter annuals, and now that's what they got to plant. So they're trying to plant into that. I'll challenge folks, if you got stuff that needs burned down, especially as woolly as some of these fields are getting, if you can think about it, get your retailer, if he's spraying it, or if you got your spray man going, get them going on that stuff early. Let that stuff dry off. It'll help that ground dry out. And then we've got kind of that continuous plan to keep our planter rolling too effectively. So again, other years we probably wouldn't maybe stress on this as much, I guess, as I think about it. But this year, I think we start to see this window from what I think we called normal last week. I'd still call it normal this week. Maybe next week we'll start calling a little bit late, depending on where we're at. But we're watching it condense, and that gets everybody nervous.
Right, and I think something else that guys got to consider out there is that if he's got cover crops and those things are growing. Again, normal years we have more products available, type of thing like that. You may not have the cover crop product out there. You may not have enough glyphosate to go after those really tall cover crops. So you might want to think maybe just a little sooner on that than maybe you traditionally would. And I think your point is too is that, again, as I said earlier, we're not trying to ask guys to stop planting, but what we may be saying is that either make sure your retailer has you on their list, or make sure if you're running your own sprayer as a grower that you're running that kind of simultaneous along with the planter too, and not all focus is that way. So
Proactive. That's the word that keeps coming to my mind, Brady, is think ahead as best as you can, and because Mother Nature is going to throw that curveball, and then we're going to be reactive because we have to. So we're still at the beginning of the season. A good plan is where I'm shooting for. One other quick topic is I don't want to, we're going to run short on time, but thinking about trying to be efficient and do a lot of things at once. One of the common things I know you deal with that I call you a lot about, just getting your advice, are weed and feed applications. And I think we're going to see that now. We got a lot of fertilizer on the fall, but that's pretty common in some areas to go out with a UAN as carrier and try to put your herbicides in and get it all done at one time. Again, I'm going to lean on your expertise. Just give us some of the tips on how to make that work right.
Yeah, I think there's several things out there that you got to keep it. When you start replacing water in the carrier mix when you're burn down herbicides with fertilizer, things change. And especially depending on your formulations, a lot of the EC or most viable concentrate formulations can run out of water in a hurry. And we always talk free water, and nobody really knows what that is. But basically, that's water that's available to mix with that product. And what happens is that the water decreases, and the higher load your fertilizer is. So let's say you go from nothing to 28% to now you're at a 32%. Each of those has less available water in them, type of thing, because there's more fertilizer in it. And so when you're using that fertilizer, and then the temptation is, I'll just do my herbicide with that as well. Well, there's a couple watch outs with that. One is that, as you start requiring the output that you need with that fertilizer, it may be 20, 25, 30, some cases even 40 gallons per acre you're trying to get out there, or even more in some extreme cases that you're trying to get out there. And so you've got to have a big nozzle. And so in order to do that, your droplet size increases. And so you start, and then guys want to go fast too, of course. Nobody wants to slow down. So what you end up with is raindrops coming out of these nozzles. It's mostly fertilizer. And so just the concept of those raindrops. So what you'll see in these cases, a lot of times you'll see a weed that is completely dead and smoked next to a weed that's completely alive. And really that's just, as you can imagine, those raindrops coming out of the back of the sprayer, that's just something you're going to have with big droplet sizes. So that's a watch out as you go there.
The other thing overall there, just to stop on that for just a second, is you think the principles of setting up a sprayer shouldn't change, right? We're changing what we do here, maybe a little bit in volume, but at the end of the day, we still want good coverage. We still want to make sure that product is in there right and mixed thoroughly. That way we're getting a good application. So just kind of boil down everything you said there real quick. As we make adjustments from 20 to 40 gallons, because that's what we need for the fertilizer, make sure we make all those adjustments, because I agree with you. I think that's one of the bigger watch outs we have on the weed control aspect of, man, I didn't get the control I thought I had, but maybe we didn't make enough adjustments. So if you are trying to change or do that is a big first step in success.
Yeah, no, back to the old adage of a good application is a good application. And so you can do it right, or you can not. And so, and then the other thing I think that we run into a lot of times with these, Jared, is that the mixing thing of it, like we talk about the free water piece and stuff like that I was hitting at, is that free water makes it tough for those ECs to mix. And then they can kind of turn into mayonnaise or gunk or junk and that type of thing like that.
And really, you and I've been around enough of those.
They're a mess. Nobody likes that. I don't like going out on the calls, and I'm sure I know the guys operating sprayers don't like those because they're a complete pain to clean. And they seem to they don't develop right away. It's usually not the first load that you do it. It's a slow process that builds over loads. And then all of a sudden they're completely plugged up. So they're just slowing down, and finally it just hits this point, a saturation point, if you will. And boom, now you've got all this gunk in there. And you got to stop what you're doing and clean the sprayer out. And you have to clean it out completely to get over it, because any residual you leave just starts contributing to it.
Right.
What do we do about that? Well, one of the ways is that we can pre-slurry our herbicides with extra water there. A lot of times a bare minimum is 1-to-1, but really we've found in our experience, a lot better experience is if you can get your 2 parts water to 1 part herbicide. So if you've got a herbicide that's got a 12-ounce use rate, you're looking at adding 24 ounces of water per acre. So if 12 ounces per acre, 24 ounces of water per acre times how many acres your load does. It's not as much water as you think. Some guys are like, oh man, 2-to-1, I don't do that. What I've seen is guys who do this successfully have adapted to, and one of the problems they run into is they don't have a water tank on the tender truck.
Right.
The next year, they typically have a water tank on the tender truck. And so wherever that's on the trailer or whatever, they add a water tank to that to be able to do that. And so if you can do this in a cone, get it all pre-slurried before you dump it in there, and don't try to just splash your herbicide in on top after you've loaded with fertilizer. Get your tank half full, get this pre-slurried mix up, really good and wet. And we use the adage of a lot of these products like to be wet, and I even see that with some of the SC products. They like to be wet, and if you can
Yes.
pre-slurry it, I don't really know of a lot of cases where it's going to hurt you, because it helps you with a dry, it helps you with an SC, and it helps you with an EC. So if you just kind of get into these habits, then it works a lot easier just to get with that. And I know we hear year to year, oh, I never had that problem with this herbicide or that problem. I've seen it with every manufacturer's product out there and every situation.
And to kind of wrap this up a little bit, because there's a lot of key items that you said there. I think just because you've never had a problem doesn't mean you won't ever have one, right? What you're doing here is a little bit more finicky than mixing in water. So if you haven't done this before, I highly suggest a jar test, because another key element is the right mixing order, right? Getting it in the right order to make sure that the pesticides we're putting in there gets exposed to that free water and it gets used properly. The next thing I'll say is agitation, constant agitation on that load the entire time you've got it mixed, to make sure we don't have any of that settling out. And often I recommend one of those compatibility agents that one of your distributors or retailer will sell, because those are an additional help when trying to get this all put together. So again, just kind of wrap this up, Brady, I think great background on why we've seen some of those challenges. And then again, kind of putting in perspective that it's something we can do, but it's not necessarily the easiest thing. We do have to take those extra steps. I think, again, because every load's going to be a little bit different, and even if you've been successful at this for several years, just make sure you review the basics. And, our reps have got great resources on that. I think you're getting ready to show one here.
I'm going to put a shameless plug in for our quick reference guide. And the reason I do that, well, what we're talking about here, Jared, is inside the back cover, we have our mixing order for with fertilizer and without fertilizer. So great information just right inside the back cover. If you don't have one, a lot of your local retailers will have one. Your local BSF rep will definitely have one.
That's right. And we want to be out here to provide information and resources to make you successful. Again, Weed and Feed, another opportunity to get products out, maybe save us some time here as we go into this next spring segment that I think is going to get really busy. Just make sure we review and follow those notes. We'll be successful. We've got great resources. Your BSF reps do as well. Feel free to reach out to those guys and gals to get that information. We want you to have a successful spring.
Very good. Well, Jared, it sounds like we've wrapped up another one here. I know we've used up our time, so we want to thank everybody for watching. Be sure you subscribe to our channel here, whether it's on YouTube or we're looking on SoundCloud as well. So make sure you get hooked up, because we're hoping to continue this on a regular basis and have this information available for you. Thanks again for watching. If you need any more information, as Jared mentioned, contact your local BASF rep, and we will see you next week.